Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day here in London. A great time to make a video because I'm home alone, just Tess and I at home, so I can make a video for you. And I'm delighted to make a video on the Fruit Bowl, a post-reading of the Fruit Bowl video. And look, there's a lot to unpick with this book. First of all, if you watched the pre-reading, I hope the book was safe, that you enjoyed the story. It's a story I absolutely love writing. I should say, because the book had two iterations, it was A Man's Life originally, and then it became The Fruit Bowl, as I think it should be. It's been written more than my other books. I do tend to write an awful lot. I rewrite and rewrite. I don't write prose at the beginning that's worth reading. Some writers probably can. I certainly can't do that. So I tend to rewrite a lot, but particularly this novel, to create this publication. And it was a tough write. People, when I read the reviews, say that they cried at the beginning and they cried at the end. That's always very heartening to me. It was a very visceral write. I cried an awful lot writing it. I really did. And I think I needed that very despairing opening for the ending to be as euphoric as I could possibly create for my readers. So there's an awful lot to unpick with the Fruit Bowl. I'm not going to do it all in this one video. I think that would become a little bit too unwieldy. So I'm going to pick out a few salient points that I wanted to share with you that you might enjoy hearing. Some of you may have heard these before if you followed my Patreon or my other sites, but anyway, I think it bears repeating. So this is the oldest story in my life, really, because it's a true story. Now, when I say true story, it is obviously a piece of fiction, but I've melded a number of things that have happened in my life, either what I've been exposed to or what has actually happened to me, to create this story, The Fruit Bowl, which just to reiterate, it's perhaps my favorite story that I've written. And it's the oldest story because it actually occurred to me. So the kernel of The Fruit Bowl is Tom going back to Birmingham to find this boy called Paddy. He doesn't know why he's going to find him. He feels he should thank the man. So that actually is a real piece of my life. So I was probably 13 or 14. I was in a playground at school. I was being picked on by a big boy. We agreed to fight after school. And then a guy from a few years above came over and intervened. He basically said to the bully, if you touch this kid after school, you'll have to deal with me tomorrow. The bully backed down, and I was incredibly grateful to this man. He was a man at the time. He would probably be about 17 at the time. I'd have been about 13. And he was a great big giant of a guy. And I never thanked him, or I don't recall thanking him anyway. And even as a young boy, I always imagined that would be a great place to start a drama from. What if that little boy, me, in later years comes back to thank the big guy and do something for him? So that nagged at my conscience for many, many years. And so when I came to writing stories and doing stand-up comedy, that sort of idea started to take on a greater importance, and I started to embellish and flesh and try to figure out how I could make that into a story. And I thought, because it's got a 30-year arc, if you like, from when that happened in the playground to when it was resolved, I thought that gives the story some real resonance. And I wanted it to just not be a thank you. I wanted it to be something bigger than that. So I thought, what if the big boy needed saving, and what if the little guy needed saving as well? Which is what actually happens in the novel as you've read it. So Tom needs saving. He's bereft. Patrick needs saving. He's bankrupt and in denial. So it was a perfect jigsaw puzzle for me. And I love that denouement. I love that outcome. Two men needing to be saved and fitting each other. And I love the fact that it came from an innocuous encounter that I actually experienced. So that there is the essence of my story. And around that, I then built the other plot devices, and I'll get into those as well in other videos. But what I wanted to share with you here now is, as I was writing this story, very emotional, very enjoying writing it, but it was a bit of a challenge. It was the first novel I wrote after I'd been fired by my traditional publisher, so I felt some pressure. As you'll know now, you can get in touch with people. Okay, you don't have to have someone's phone number to call them. You can reach out in myriad ways: email, messenger, Facebook, all these things. And I get a lot of incoming, I have to say. It's a little overwhelming. I can't deal with it all, but some things do get through. And as I was writing this book, I got an email from from none other than the boy who had saved me in that playground all those years ago. I couldn't believe it. I remembered his name. I remember the bully's name. I've changed him in the book. I couldn't believe he got in touch with me. And what he was asking for me, because I was well known at the time, he was asking me to come and do a benefit gig for him, to do basically a gig for a reduced fee or gratis to raise money for a charity. And the charity was his local village hall. And he said to me, he emailed me, said, Dominic, you said, you won't remember me. We were at school together. Would you be happy to come along and do this gig? And of course, I thought, well, I owe this guy. This is the guy I need to thank. So I went along, and I was, as I say, I was a bigger comedian than I am now. So the room was really packed. We did the show. The show was a big success. And I didn't mention anything to him before the show because I didn't want to, I don't know, prejudice things or jeopardize something or jinx me. But because the show was such a success, I felt afterwards that I had a real opportunity to bring up this intercourse that had happened between us all these years ago. And I asked him about the incident, and he had no recollection of it at all, which was interesting to me as a storyteller because it had an indelible impression on me, and yet to him it had no bearing whatever. He couldn't remember it. He had no, and I thought that was really interesting. And I think that affected my story. I think I probably had it that in the book anyway, that Paddy would have forgotten it, because it makes the book more, it makes the story more compelling. That something so innocuous to Patrick, but so big to Tom, would come back to save their lives. And I told him about this book I was writing. I said, I'm writing a book that you've inspired. And we had a good laugh about it. And he's since read the book and he's been in touch. He loved it. I was very heartened to meet him again. And it made that, for me, qualified the story as I was writing it. So there's a number of other things in the Fruit Bowl that are true, but didn't happen to me, thank God. So I was driving in London. I was a sales rep before I did stand-up comedy. And the road that circumnavigates London is the M25. It's London. It's Britain's most notorious motorway. And there was a man driving on that road, and he was in his Range Rover, which is an expensive car, and his wife and kids were ahead of him in a Mercedes, which is an expensive car. And the Mercedes flipped on the road, and unfortunately, his wife and children died in that Mercedes. And I was driving along hearing this story, and I couldn't get over what I was hearing, that this man, who was obviously wealthy to have these two cars, has everything in a flash, and he saw it, which I think is unimaginable. And it never really left me, that idea, the idea that this man has all this success and then suddenly has nothing. And I always thought that would be a phenomenal place to start a drama from, a story from. How is he going to rekindle his life? What's going to happen to him? And so, and that's what I mean about the Fruit Bowl being a series of things in my life that I've melded together to create this narrative. And that's how I created my character, Tom, the man who has it all, and in a flash, and it can happen. You can get a diagnosis. Your life can be chucking along, and then suddenly you're diagnosed with something which changes everything. Or you can get a phone call like Tom got, or the policeman arriving at his office. And that does happen to people. That did happen to this man. And so that's how I started to augment my central kernel of a story and build out and create this resolution. And there's a series of other things, folks, which I'm going to get into and make other videos for you about the Fruit Bowl. But I wanted to just keep these brief, and so you can watch them in bite-sized chunks. But look, you've read the Fruit Bowl, okay? So thank you for doing so. But I am passionate about the story. I think it's a great book, great story. and I'm really going to try and show it some of the love I've given to Only in America of late, because I think it got hardly read at all off my own publishing follies. So I've got big plans for the Fruit Bowl, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Tom loved it, and he called me up and gave me that classic reaction that he cried at the beginning and he cried at the end, and that's for me a great testament. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for reading it, guys. And as I say, I'm going to make other videos about the other things in my life that I've used to create the story. Okay. Best wishes to you all. Bye-bye.